Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Don't Risk It podcast presented by VFIS Client Risk Solutions. This program focuses on the exposures our clients frequently encounter and discusses some potential solutions to help reduce these exposures. I'm your host, Chris Rogers with VFIS Client Risk Solutions, and today we're discussing vehicle-mounted attenuators and emergency response. Joining me on the program today are Wesley Attwood and Chief Jordon Cramer. Wesley is the Senior Investigator for NIOSH's Firefighter Fatality Investigation and Prevention Program, and Chief Cramer is the Fire Chief for the South Strabane Township Fire Department in Washington County, Pennsylvania. They're joining us today to discuss how these attenuators can be utilized to help keep our emergency responders safer while responding near traffic. Wesley, thank you for joining me today, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Chief Cramer, it's a pleasure to have you on as well, and I want to thank you for joining the program.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. This topic, something that's really important to us at South Strabane Fire.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So, Wesley, let's start the questioning off with you. Historically, the use of truck-mounted attenuators has been limited to the construction and highway maintenance industries. Why has this gravitated to be used in emergency services?
Well, fire and emergency services, like the construction industry, place a high emphasis on protecting their workers at emergency roadway incidents. These organizations have found that the use of truck-mounted attenuators to reduce the risk of workers and equipment being struck. Damage to fire apparatus and ambulances can be very costly. Depending on the severity of damage, these vehicles may be out of service for a lengthy period of time to complete repairs. Loss of this equipment for any length of time can hamper a fire department or even an emergency medical service agency's ability to provide its primary services. Additionally, in recent years, both the price of and the build time for fire apparatus, such as engines and ladder trucks, has grown significantly. Current estimates place the cost of new vehicles without any tools or equipment at more than $1 million, and they can take between 3 to 7 years to build before fire departments can place them in service.
So, Jordan, can you follow up to what Wesley said regarding attenuators and talk about SOPs? Are there standardized SOPs that can be shared with departments that may be interested in adopting these devices?
Yeah, I think Wesley makes a great point. One of the reasons that we've come into this realm of safety at South Strabane is that we've had 2 fire apparatus that have been struck on I-70 and I-79 within our district. It seems that often these vehicle operators who strike apparatus actually don't have insurance or don't have enough to be able to cover what it would cost to repair a fire truck. So that really was the catalyst for us to start to look at how we could possibly do this differently. And that took us into the TMA world, the traffic mounted attenuators. As far as SOPs go, there are a lot of departments that I'm familiar with that do have a standardized SOP that they're using for it. Something that we're still missing, I would say, as an industry is, we don't have a national standard for it. There are resources that we can find through state departments of transportation, different traffic incident management programs for guidelines, but they're not made for the fire service. I think it is certainly a great stepping off point for most departments to use those and develop their policies. But I can tell you through a lot of conversations I've had on a regional and national level pertaining to traffic incident management is we're trying to find some type of a national alliance or organization that can really kind of come out as a front runner to help us start to standardize things like this. Make it easier for departments that purchase these vehicles to put them in service.
It's pretty hard to standardize from departments across the country because not everyone has the same staffing model, or
right.
or the vehicles might not be at the exact location every time. That's pretty hard to do. So
Sure.
You're absolutely right that it's kind of it's a moving target, but it's a good moving target that we're trying to nail down. And at VFIS, we don't have any specific stats in regards to, how often this has. It's more of a severity issue with us because when one of these, one a frontline engine with $1 million, or it could be an aerial that's running around $2 million. When one of those gets hit, it's going to be a significant loss. And on the severity side. So trying to reduce that with something that absorbs impact versus, taking the blunt force of it. I think that's a great step, and I applaud you all for taking that step.
Thank you.
So, Wesley, can you discuss how emergency service organizations typically block today, and why TMA or truck-mounted attenuators make sense as an improvement in this practice?
Sure. So when working on or along roadways, emergency responders are usually trained to place their apparatus in a blocking position to reduce the risk of injuries and fatalities from secondary crashes. So this creates a large and heavy barrier between the oncoming traffic and the work area where firefighters and emergency medical service providers perform their tasks. While this approach is effective at protecting workers, the vehicles used as blockers, such as the fire apparatus or ambulances, risk being damaged by oncoming traffic and distracted drivers.
So, Wesley, what are the benefits of using an attenuator-equipped vehicle versus a piece of fire apparatus?
The truck-mounted attenuators are energy-absorbing devices attached to the rear of trailers or trucks. They're designed to reduce the force of impact, thus reducing injury severity to the occupants of the vehicle crashing into them, as well as increasing survivability. Additionally, placing vehicles with TMAs or truck-mounted attenuators before the roadway emergency workers or equipment provides motorists an opportunity to change lanes, potentially avoiding rear-end crashes. As such, their use also reduces the risk to workers and equipment being struck.
Yeah, it's akin of more of putting a pillow to block the scene versus putting a big wall of cement. It's something that's going to absorb that impact versus just being a big blunt force stop.
Exactly.
So, Wesley, what are some of the options available to ESOs? What type of attenuator setups can they choose from, and what are some of the manufacturers?
So there's generally three options that we've seen in the industry as of today. The first being repurposing reserve or retired apparatus for public works vehicles as blockers and retrofitting them with truck-mounted attenuators. Fire service industry has also purchased purpose-built blocker vehicles that are designed and equipped with truck-mounted attenuators. And finally, the third thing that we've been seeing is fire departments purchasing new apparatus with truck-mounted attenuators that are installed already.
Jordan, in your opinion, is the ideal setup a vehicle with an attenuator and a directional LED signage, or is there some other avenue we should approach?
So that's the avenue that we're currently utilizing in conjunction with another support vehicle with a large signboard on it. I can tell you just from experience over the past couple months having this in service that it absolutely makes a significant difference. However, I think it's important to note that as Wesley mentioned, there are other options. I was talking with the deputy chief from Texas a few days ago, and they're looking at a tow behinds option that actually focuses on putting the blocking at a 60 or 45 degree angle rather than something that's straight on. So I think as most folks will be familiar that are listening to this podcast, as when we block accident scenes, we're normally on some type of an angle. That's how we're taught. That's how we can protect it best. The TMA truck that's going to come behind and hopefully protect the fire apparatus, it has to be hit straight on for it to absorb the force of that accident fully. So that's one of the things that, we've only got a 10-foot area maybe for somebody to hit it. If they go outside of that area, they may impact the fire apparatus. They may impact the accident scene. So that's one of the options that's out there. Trailer mounted TMAs are also something that might be a little bit a little bit more feasible for some departments. But ultimately, I think any of these options are far, far better than simply placing an engine or an aerial behind a fire scene that's a frontline apparatus. I'm also seeing, specifically again in Texas, even tractor-drawn blocking rigs, as well as decommissioned aerials that they're not necessarily putting a TMA on, but they're using that entire apparatus as the absorption. So there are a lot of options, and as you mentioned earlier, I think it involves us being creative to figure out what fits our response district the best.
Absolutely. There's the financial component to it, and then there's the what is your response area? Because I've seen some of those. I live in Texas and work in Texas, and I've seen some of those tractor drawn or essentially refurbed tractor trailer trucks that have been that have an attenuator on them, and they do block a significant amount of roadway, but they're also on interstates and highways that have more than 2 lanes or 3 lanes on one side, so they need that little extra room and protection.
That's right.
So when we roll out a new piece of equipment, we typically want to train on that so we can know how to use it and best practices and whatnot. Chief, what kind of training is needed for responders when we're deploying this piece of equipment?
Yeah, so that's one of the extremely important components of this. We're putting people in some pretty dangerous situations when they're deploying these apparatus. So, we started out with simple driving and operating of the vehicle in conjunction with how to use the actual components, the signboard, the TMA, how to deploy those. There's also some other components that we have on the truck, which is some cameras that actually record so that if we are struck, we'll have footage of that incident. But it's department dependent. We require a CDL, commercial driver's license, in South Strabane for folks that drive this apparatus. I know that there are a lot of departments around Pennsylvania, around the whole country, that may not require that, so their training program is going to differ slightly. But primarily, what we have done is focused on the actual operation of the apparatus. And more times than not, our goal is to keep that operator inside of the vehicle with their seatbelt buckled, because putting them out on the highway is obviously something that's extremely concerning and dangerous.
Well, I mean, it's similar to your driver training program for your fire apparatus. You train on an engine. If you have aerials, I assume you would train on an aerial because it's a new truck and you want to train specifically to that. That would be no different for the TMA to train specifically to how that vehicle operates.
That's right.
So, Chief, how did you go about obtaining your rig?
Yes, it was actually an interesting chain of events. We had been at a national conference, I think Fire Rescue International from the ISC, and had talked with a vendor that was focused on taking decommissioned engines and rigs and then converting them over to TMA trucks for traffic. And at the time, it was just cost prohibitive for us. Spending $100,000 to $150,000. I think everybody listening with knowledge of the current price of fire apparatus is aware of the fact that trying to divert that amount of money away from buying new rigs, which we need on the road anyway, is extremely difficult. It's difficult to convince elected officials about that. It's difficult to, unfortunately, convince our own department sometimes. Shortly after we had spoken with that vendor, we had our aerial truck hit on I-70 in South Strabane, resulting in significant damage. About 6 months after that, we had a tanker truck that was hit on, a flyover from 79 to I-70. And a few months later, we had found that, unfortunately, this company that was built on making all of us safer by decommissioning these rigs and then converting them over to truck-mounted attenuator rigs was going out of business because not enough of fire departments are actually buying them. Because of that, we were able to obtain a unit that had been converted at affordable cost compared to what they would have been new from that business. So that's how we came into actually obtaining our rig. Our volunteer fire department purchased it. I was very thankful for that. It wasn't a small amount of money, but everybody understood the fact that we have to protect, most importantly, our people. But as Wesley mentioned earlier, the build time and the cost of fire apparatus right now is outrageous. So we have to do everything that we can to protect these apparatus. Otherwise, we are going to be put in a situation where we're not able to adequately serve our stakeholders. So those were the things that kind of led to our decision to move forward and purchase this. But the reason we were able to is because it was at a reduced price and we could afford it.
So do you all have like a flatbed with some concrete as a ballast, and then with the attenuator mounted into the back? What exactly do you all, or is it something different?
Yeah, it's a KME engine that was converted to a flatbed with the attenuator on the back. The company that built it was a steel company, so they actually reinforced the bed with a few thousand pounds of additional steel. And the advantage to that was the fact that we have a fully usable bed rather than having to put a jersey barrier or a concrete block in the back for the extra weight.
Good deal. Well, we talked about that it's not the apples to apples to everyone because of how they deploy their crews and whatnot. So for your organization, how is this apparatus rolled out to incidents, or what's the specific criteria for when to deploy?
Sure. So if our staffing allows, oftentimes daylight it's a little bit easier because I have extra people on. We'll deploy the traffic truck with the rescue engine that's responding to the initial call. And that's specific normally to accidents that are on interstates. Our local roads are not as difficult. However, it does occasionally go to those incidents. But everything we do is based on staffing. We're a combination fire department with career and volunteer firefighters. Our minimum staffing is 2 firefighters on duty. So if we get an accident on the interstate, those 2 firefighters that might be on duty are going to be responding in the rescue engine. And we're going to be relying on callbacks from volunteer and career firefighters to come in and grab the TMA truck. We're fortunate to have some extra people around the station most days that can take the TMA out if needed. But our other option that we use frequently is putting out what we consider an all-call. So if we arrive to a significant accident on the interstate where we know that we are going to be committed for a period of time, we'll dispatch the call again and specifically request that somebody bring our traffic truck out. And that's one of the things that normally gets to the scene pretty easily.
Was that one of the biggest hurdles? Was staffing concerns? I mean, I know you mentioned the finances involved with acquiring it, but once you acquired it, it doesn't drive it. It doesn't drive itself, and with 2-person crews on duty, it's that can be
Right.
a struggle. So, was that one of the biggest hurdles? Was trying to identify how you would get staff in that vehicle and get it to the scene when needed?
Absolutely. It continues to be one that we have to figure out as time goes. One of the things that, I'm hopeful for the future is that we start to treat this as more of a regional asset. There's only one of these in our county. We know that our state Department of Transportation very rarely is coming out to assist us with these types of things. So ultimately it goes back on us as fire departments, EMS organizations to keep each other safe. So we will continue to try to apply for funding so that we can have this staff 24/7. However, with every fire department, the staffing is going to be one of the major difficulties as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I cover about 7 or 8 states that I go to, and there's a lot of departments that have them. That there's a similar situation to you. They have them, but the staffing is always the biggest issue of who do we put in it and how do we get it out there and where it's needed most.
Right.
So Wesley, I want to go back to you. Are there any other options available if a department currently doesn't have the funding to invest in an attenuator?
Sure. So another option would be working with and relying upon highway departments for deployment of their vehicles with truck-mounted attenuators to be used as blockers at roadway incidents.
Chief, how do you think we educate the public about integrating these systems into emergency services? They'll likely continue to, view them as a construction tool unless we have a big emblem on there that says fire department.
Right. Yeah. And like you just mentioned, that public perception is powerful. People are going to see the attenuator truck and immediately think road work, certainly not an emergency. We have to try to connect the dots for people and give them all the tools to understand this. That's also going to help us in the long term when we look at trying to fund apparatus like this. So, I mean, to me, that means everything from social media videos showing what a TMA does maybe some ride-alongs with local news or reporters from newspapers, and then including them in our safety days. We've been trying to get this truck out when we have touch of trucks and things like that, so people can start to see the fact that they're probably going to see this on the roadway, and that it's not just construction crews that are actually using them. One of the other benefits that we've had is there are many times where we're called out to the interstate where we can release a unit and we're simply waiting to provide traffic control to the state police. Again, even though that should be a Department of Transportation function, but we're able to just leave this vehicle and we can put our rescue engine back in service. So the benefits is, they really continue to pop up if we use it more and more.
So, Wesley, we know that you have a blog post looking for information from ESOs that are using TMAs. What information are you looking to obtain, and how can our listeners participate?
Sure. So NIOSH and its federal partners identified several knowledge gaps in the blog, which should be explored to ensure the safe and effective use of truck-mounted attenuators in the fire and emergency services. If you are interested in adding to this conversation, please consider responding to the questions in the blog under the Share Your Department's Efforts section.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time this morning. That was a lot of great information for a new product that's or a new piece of equipment that's readily coming into service for many departments across the country. It's definitely needed to save some of these more expensive pieces of equipment that we have, and more importantly, the lives of the responders that are out there. So, Wesley, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Chief Cramer, it was great to talk to you, and I want to thank you for your time as well.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
And I want to thank you for listening to the program and for your interest in VFIS safety resources. I want to thank our guests Wesley Attwood and Chief Jordon Cramer once again for their time and information. Please consider subscribing to our program to stay up to date on new content releases. Also, if you like what you've heard, please consider leaving a review below. For more information about the many resources available from VFIS, please visit VFIS.com. And to submit ideas for future discussions, please reach out by emailing VFISriskcontrol@VFIS.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. The views, information, or opinions expressed during this program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Gladfelter Insurance Group, VFIS, and its employees.